Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas. And today I'm recording episode, 236 or something. Today I have with me Matt Leiv with expert.ai. Matt, thank you for joining me today. How is it going?
Hey, thanks a lot, Tony. It's going good and it's getting better every day. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. It's nice and sunny here in Atlanta. And I am vaccinated and ready to hit the road again once
there we go.
Once events start happening again. So yeah, I'm in a good mood. Thank you. So Matt, what is expert.ai?
Well, there's a lot that goes into it, but real high-level overview. We're a 30-plus-year-old company specializing in artificial intelligence, and we do. If anyone's familiar with what artificial intelligence is or what it can do, we basically combine symbolic knowledge graph type technology with machine learning and accelerate processes. So without getting down into the details, something like reviewing a risk engineer report that takes 4 hours with our technology, a senior risk engineer can do it in 5 minutes. So we take big complex processes and compact it and allow experts and humans to do what they're best at. I term it as, and I took this from CEO of IBM, as augmenting humans, making us better at what we already are good at.
Okay. So within the insurtech space, and you guys are interesting because you're playing within the insurtech space, but I wouldn't call you an insurtech if you've been around for 30 years, right?
Correct.
So within the insurtech space, there are probably 300 companies doing AI, but
at least.
Generally they seem to be very specific, right? So
Yep.
We help you with this very specific thing. What you're describing is a lot more. I don't want to say general AI because I know that has a meaning within AI of like actual, like overall intelligence, right? The
That's the
Jetsons
Skynet type
robot.
stuff.
Right?
Yeah.
Which we're far away from yet as a society or as humanity is far away from that for now.
Depending on who you ask, we're somewhere between far away and never, just depending on who you ask.
Exactly. So I don't want to use the word general AI, but what you described is a lot more general than a lot of the other insurtechs. Am I understanding that correctly? So let's start with the example that you mentioned about the risk engineer. Okay. So yeah, let's say that I am, FM Global, and I have a ton of engineers on staff, and they're very expensive. I call you in. I'm assuming that there's a lengthy setup process to get to that point where my process can go from days to minutes or from hours to minutes.
Well, it's funny, that one little question, there's a huge amount to unpack within all of that, which is what makes working in artificial intelligence really fun and exciting and also really hair-pulling. I think my hairline has receded a bit since I started. But, I guess the first thing there would be us versus insurtech. Is there a difference? What is the difference? So an insurtech, as you described, usually has a single exact use cases, what we call it, basically one single solution. And how a lot of these come out is you've got a insurance experienced individual and a tech buddy, and they're like, hey, I bet we could solve this one problem. And so they create a technology around that and solving that problem. And what we have is kind of the opposite, where we have all those different point solutions, but we actually created the platform first. So it's, what you can do with it is basically, what can you imagine? It's almost limitless. It's depending on what resources you want to put into it, right? Because it can, it can take a lot. But it's really, and that's how a lot of these use cases came about, is specific insurers like, Zurich or AXA XL were like, hey, this is a problem. We want to develop a use case around that. You've already got the technology. Let's figure out a way to solve this problem, and that's what's done. So it's the ability to scale. It really is our main difference between an insurtech. Insurtech has one specific point solution that they're working on, one specific problem. we can come in and we can solve all different kinds of problems, and we can scale up throughout a company. So it's, do you want to go with, just trying to do a single point solution, or do you want to come in and solve a bunch of problems, or be able to set up the infrastructure to set up a bunch of problems, or solve a bunch of problems? And part of what plays into that and makes it valuable, as you know, it can get pretty complex and it can take a long time. So do you want to spend all this time and resources to solve one problem, then that's it? Or do you want to solve that one problem and then be able to expand and solve additional problems?
Okay. Can you give me a couple of client stories, and you can use the names or you can keep the names out, up to you, but a couple of client stories of specific things that you guys helped carriers solve?
Absolutely. So I think risk engineering, loss control is a great example, and a public reference for us being, and I'll list ones that are public references so people can go and look into this stuff. But risk engineer, AXXL helped develop the risk engineering solution, which is, you've got your senior risk engineers, very expensive. The overall in the industry, we're seeing they're aging out. There's not enough new experienced talent coming into insurance. And hey, side note, some of that's probably the opinion we have, as a society against insurance. Unfortunately, it's an amazing industry. And so it was like, how can we make these individuals more efficient? So it would take them 4 hours just to do a single report. They were missing, they weren't even pursuing a lot of business because they just didn't have the capacity to do it. So we came in, worked with them, developed this single solution, took a 4-hour process down to about 5 minutes. And so instead of doing 1 or 2 reports in a day, they can do 10 reports, everything that comes in. And then they can also, pre-COVID and post-COVID, be able to go do on-site inspections and other things that they really lend value to, as opposed to being overpaid box checkers on paperwork. And so that was completely game-changing solution for them. As it's a public reference, we've got interviews with them out there online. Anyone that wants to check them out, coming straight from their head of innovation, like, wow, this is amazing, and what it could do for them. That's just, it's a great example. And as we've been around for 30 plus years within insurance, we have a lot of different examples like that. Another one would be policy review. When COVID hit, we had a bunch of insurers where they had no idea what their exposure was on these COVID related liabilities, whether it's unemployment or displacement, or whether it's not being able to keep facilities open. There's just all this different stuff that came about, and a bunch of insurers were like, oh, well, what's our risk? What's our exposure? What are we going to have to pay out? And instead of trying to hire 200 professionals to review all their policies and find out where they're exposed, we used a solution to where it can read and make sense of all the information within a policy and show all the exposure. And literally, the UI is like a very simple pop-up. These are the different exposures. These are the things to look into. So instead of sitting there and reading a document, it was somewhere between 2 and 4 hours. Again, 5 or 10 minutes. And it allowed them to, allowed different insurers like Zurich just to go through and analyze all their policies, full portfolios, something that never could be done without AI. You can't, stand up 200-300 individuals, train them, and have them do that. The costs are immense. The time frame, it's just not possible. So what's the technology do? It comes in and allows people to do their specialties and get things done that wouldn't otherwise be able to be done. So hopefully those two kind of demonstrate, some of what's going on and what's possible with the technology.
What's the time frame for a project like that?
So that's such a great question, and it comes down to a couple of different factors, being what the specific use case is, the complexity, the amount of data, and all of that. However, the advantage of using a pre-created solution, let's say risk engineering, we could do something like a proof of value in 1 week. Take a set of documents, run it through the system, key extractions, liability, different entities like the buildings, the companies, the names, whatever it might be, and that can be done within a week. You can be live within 1 to 2 months. Now, if you want to solve a new problem that hasn't been done before, then you're looking at anything 6 to 12 months because you have to create the solution. There's a lot of labor-intensive work that goes into it. However, what's the ROI on that? If it turns out that it would be a significant advantage to you, then you might want to do it. That's what AXA did with risk engineering. It wasn't there before. The technology was, but the specific solution wasn't there before, and so they spent the time and resources to build it or help build it. And because of that, now insurers come to us and we're like, hey, in 1 week we can show you results, and they're like, what? That's incredible. Yeah. So situation dictates.
So this is a silly question, but I am curious. Is there like a menu of the solutions that have already been developed that could be done quickly?
Yeah, just like Denny's, you go out.
Exactly.
No, yeah, there is actually. So the most common that we've seen throughout Europe and North America would be on the website under insurance. If you contact someone like myself or someone that helps with the business development consultation, we know about obviously a larger range of those use cases. But really, what it generally comes down to is an initial meeting. An insurer identifies, hey, we've got this problem. Who has solutions that can, help solve this? It's very rare for an insurer to say, we've got the problem and we know what solution we need, because the technology is so new. Insurance, as you're well aware of, is not exactly the first to adopt new technology. So even though this
generally,
yeah, it's behind governments. So they're adopting after government. That's when you know it's really slow.
Exactly. Once government, trucking, and grave digging have adopted technology, then we consider it.
AI for grave digging. That's probably out there somewhere. Yeah, because they're just behind the curve on that kind of technology in general. They don't know exactly what kinds of solutions they need, and I would really advise any insurer that's out there looking into this stuff is do your research, have conversations. Don't if you come talk to me and I'm like, just give you all the right information, you're like, oh my god, this is it. Still do your due diligence. Go out and look at other options. See what else is out there. Do your research, because there's 300 plus insurtechs out there. And again, we're not an insurtech, but there's 300 plus companies out there trying to do this kind of stuff. And with that many out there, that there's probably some really good options and a whole lot of not so great options. And don't fall down the rabbit hole of just throwing money into something that's not going to give you a positive ROI.
Okay. What kind of problems can you is there a definition or a rule of thumb? This is the kind of thing that we can probably help with, the kind of thing that we probably can't help with.
So there's broad strokes. If you need to increase capacity, you need to pursue more business, you have unintended exposures. For example, we had, I can't remember the exact use case off the tip of my tongue, but there was one where I believe it was under risk engineering, where a client, they're using the templates, renewing for, whatever properties. Something was missed and a building burned down. And because it wasn't caught because it was done manually, and humans, like after lunch or right before the bell rings on Friday afternoon, are not as attentive as the rest of the week. One of those slipped through and it ended up costing them like $10 million, and they had to cover it. Whereas that kind of solution would have instantly caught it, and that's why they went in with our solution. And now that's no problem that they're not going to come into. But it's the same thing, like if you want to protect from exposure, leakage, if you want to increase your capacity, your offer capacity, if you want to process, policies faster, claims faster. It's really inefficiencies, and that's another obstacle. A lot of the conversations I have with insurers is they know end state of maybe what they want, maybe no touch claims, for example. We want stuff come in, be fully automated, and we don't have to touch it, and we're willing to pay big bucks for it. It's like, oh, okay, that's incredible. We'd love to work with you on that. What's your process? Oh, yeah, we actually don't know our exact process. Like, it's kind of hard to create a solution when you don't even know what the process is, and oftentimes we'll have these conversations, they get really excited, we get really excited, everyone's excited, and it's like, okay, now we have to map out the process. Well, add 6 months because we have no idea what it is. End of quarter's coming up, so that's the priority. Budget got shifted, let's push it back another 3 to 6 months. It's just complexities that arise, especially within insurance. A lot of these companies, they don't know their full process end to end. They don't have it mapped out, and you can't automate something that you don't know the intricacies of what's going on.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, definitely. That we have a lot of institutional knowledge in our industry, and it's probably partially because of our technology, right? We've been using old technology forever, so there's a lot of...
It worked, why break it? Or why fix it if it's not broke?
Well... Yeah, that's part of it, and people tend to stay within the same company for a long time. At least historically, they have.
Especially in insurance.
Exactly.
Everyone I talk to at the biggest, can't give the names out if they're not public reference, but the biggest insurers out there. When I go into these meetings, everybody 20 to 30 years in the same company. It's like
exactly. So
no other industry have I seen that.
So
except for government.
You end up, and that speaks. It's a good part about insurance when it comes to insurance
absolutely.
as a career. It's a great career. That's why people stay, and they stay forever. Many times in the same company. That's changing a little bit with the newer generation, but still. But the problem is that if you stay forever, and the industry is used to that, then there's no pressure to make sure everything's documented, to make sure, right? Yeah. Like John knows how to do it.
We'll just give it to Tony. He always takes care of it.
Exactly. We'll try to make sure that he teaches somebody else before he retires. But retirement is fairly predictable.
That's a funny little tangent on the risk reports. One of the insurers that we're working with, we did an audit of their top 5 risk engineers, and they had between the top 5, like I think it was 5 or 10 reports, so not a huge set, 20% variance above and below the way they scored. Completely subjective. And you think like these are the best of big name insurer, the absolute best, some of the best in the industry, 20% variance. And the whole industry is because we're so used to those legacy relationships, legacy processes, and if it's not broken, then why are we going to mess with it? That type of attitude. And I mean, really, I think that's part of the human condition in general. It's just easier to get away with it in insurance because it's so analog and it's so manual. And
it's changing. It's the
Slowly.
pressure that we're getting from InsurTech and from how competitive insurance has gotten in many markets. It's changing. Who tends to be your client? Is it the CIO or is it the business unit leader? Who tends to benefit from bringing you on?
So these types of projects, we find they're very complex, and the best way to go about it is involve everybody from top sign off, which might be CIO or CTO or COO, whoever it might be, all the way down to the directors, the ones overseeing the actual engineers or processors or underwriters or whoever it might be. And the reason being is each one of these individuals takes part in the process at some point. And so if you're coming in and augmenting this process and making it faster or more efficient or more accurate or whatever you might be doing, it's going to affect every single person. And if you have any one department that's like, no way am I doing this, I don't believe in the solution or the technology or whatever it might be, and they throw a stick in the spokes of the bike, like that thing's flipping. You have to involve absolutely everybody that this technology is going to get involved with, and that's also what makes it a little bit more difficult, especially during the pandemic, of solving problems. Is everybody has to be on board, because maybe the chief underwriting officer is all about it, and then a couple steps down, a VP is vehemently against it because they're going to retire in 2 years and they don't want to upset anything.
Vehemently against that.
Yeah. I've been on a few calls and meetings where that was probably a nice way to put it.
That is an actual word. I just looked
Yeah.
it up. It's not every day that I learn a new SAT word.
Well, you try and
Vehemently
change
against
the
it.
insurance industry, and that's what you're going to come up against sometimes.
It is definitely changing this industry is definitely a behemoth of a task. No question
Yeah.
about it.
It's like trying to turn that tanker that got stuck in the canal.
Oh yeah, it's needed, and I think that as an industry we are gaining appetite for it, which we lacked
Yeah.
before. We've realized that change has to happen. We've realized that if change doesn't happen, eventually, even with all the regulatory protections we have because of the way we regulate it, and even the amount of capital that is needed to create an insurance company, we have realized that yes, eventually it'll happen. We'll get disrupted if we don't bring ourselves into the late 20th century at the very least. I
think part of that is also just the it used to be seen as such a negative, and people are starting to see and understand it's a positive. For example, an example I use is you're hired in for certain skill set capabilities and to do a certain job, and if half of every single day, in some cases 80% of every single day, is responding to emails or filling out paperwork that could be automated and is not using your skill set, that is a really unfulfilling place to be within your career. You spend all these years developing this great skill set, and instead of doing your job, 70-80% of your time is checking boxes because that's, it fell on you. That's a horrible place to be. I'd be pulling even more hair out, if I was in that situation. And so people are starting to see like, oh, this is actually, it's not something to be scared of. This is actually helping me do my job and just have a better life in general.
That is a great way to put it. I really can't put it better than that. That is really, really, really good. Thank you. So Matt, if a listener found this interesting, how do they connect with you? I will include the link to your LinkedIn profile on the show notes, and I will include the link to the company website, which is expert.ai. So that's pretty easy.
Yes, very easy.
So what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, if they want to connect with me specifically, I've got an open profile. I've got 11,000 followers on there, so very visible. Happy to answer any and all questions. No obligation. If you just have questions about AI or insurance or my German Shepherds, hit me up. Happy to talk. If you're looking for specifically, you've got a project going on or something, there's contact us button on probably every page of that website, and we've got people responding same day, maybe within a few hours. That'll help get a meeting set up for whoever's the right point of contact for them to speak to for what they're looking into.
And we're recording today, late April, as the vaccination seems to be going well in the States, but I don't think conferences have restarted yet. If assuming that we do have fall conferences, will we find you at InsurTech Connect or the Connected Claims Conference, or are there any specific conferences that we might find you at?
Hopefully, really right now everything's still tentative. We don't have stuff booked out. So we have we actually just had AI in finance and insurance, which was today. We did the IRES regulation event 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we were there a couple weeks ago. Would like to go back to Silicon Prairie. we're really looking to see what's slated for in person, because now there's still it's really a toss up. I share anytime I go to an event, so as soon as we get physical locations booked. The thing is, virtual is really kind of run its course. I think people are pretty tired of the virtual events, and it hasn't been a place to be able to engage. And it's funny because insurance is such an engagement focused industry, relationship driven, meeting and speaking in person, and then taking that and sticking it on virtual platforms. They're already turned off within the industry, and so now we're running at 12, 18 months of virtual events. I don't think I'm going to be doing any more virtual events until it's actually in person, but once those get booked, definitely be sharing it all over social. We'd love to connect with people again and actually get out and speak and talk and communicate.
I'm booked for InsurTech Connect, both
Nice.
the ticket and the hotel, and I can't tell you how it took me a little convincing the company to go for it, but they did, and so I get the registration for InsurTech Connect, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, and then I get the hotel reservation, and I'm like, oh my God, this is actually probably happening. Like, this is so exciting. So
it's probably the most excited you've been for an event since you did your first event ever.
Exactly. It's
like being a kid again.
Yeah. So I think before that I'll be at CPCU annual meeting or InterRisk in Orlando, which is September. But I think that ITC in October will be the real the real gigantic event that will actually happen. I'm hoping. So I think that that'll be a real return to the new normal, whatever that new normal looks like for most of the industry. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been interesting. Look forward to see what you guys do. Keep me posted as interesting projects get implemented within insurance. Love to hear and help the audience learn what is possible.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Tony. Really enjoyed it. Look forward to connecting in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.